Good morning. Today on Spotlight, meet Sonia Mays, President and CEO of Develop Detroit. Her organization says it builds vibrant, resilient communities and expands opportunities for all residents to succeed. Why is this well-educated, corporate-trained, one-time Wall Street lawyer staking her claim and career in Detroit neighborhoods and the city she grew up in? We'll find out. And later on our program, Siham Awada Jafar and David Robinson will take us inside the Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center. It's Sunday, December the 8th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Let's start with the national publicity. You were recently on 60 Minutes with Leslie Stahl. What's been the reaction?
Such a really cool experience. The reaction has been very, very positive. I've been doing this work with my team here at Develop Detroit for about 5 years, very quietly, and it was really nice to get a little bit of national spotlight on some of the neighborhood work that we've been doing in Detroit. So
your good deeds are paying off.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those who don't know what Develop Detroit is, if you ran into someone on the corner and they said, okay, you got 30 seconds to tell me in a nutshell what's Develop Detroit, what's your pitch?
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple. We're real estate developers with a twist. We are real estate developers, but we happen to be a nonprofit and we happen to be interested in rebuilding neighborhoods. And so when you think about a real estate developer, most of the time you're thinking about these guys who are out there building big downtown skyscrapers. Mm-hmm. We do some of the same work, but our focus is really about how does an organization, how does a community use real estate to strengthen a neighborhood, to rebuild a neighborhood, to rebuild community, and that's what we do.
And Sonia, your focus is squarely on the neighborhoods.
It is.
For the large part, correct?
It is.
All right, and that's what everybody is saying Detroit has to be focused on now. Downtown's doing okay, Midtown's doing well. It's going to continue to keep developing. We see that happening, knock on wood. But if the city is going to fully come back and be as vibrant as we all want it to be, it's got to trickle into the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. You agree?
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm very fond of saying is we have this incredible moment here in Detroit when I think about neighborhood development, when I think about equitable development. Mm-hmm. If you look at some of the other cities that have grappled with neighborhood change and gentrification, if you think about a Harlem or a DC, Detroit has an advantage in that.
What's that advantage?
Well, our advantage is, I'm always looking for the silver lining in things, right? So we go through a municipal bankruptcy, we hit the proverbial rock bottom. There's no place to go but up. But here's this wonderful opportunity to get it right? Yeah. To learn from the mistakes of other places. Yes. So and so for me, it's about how do we take some of the best learnings in other communities around how you can build prosperous neighborhoods. How you can prepare a future after blight, after financial devastation, and learn from those lessons and do things, get it right here in Detroit, because we're innovators here in Detroit.
Sure.
And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to build on that in our neighborhoods.
So that our viewers understand a little bit about who Sonia Mays is. Who is Sonia Mays? I know you bleed go blue, but talk a little bit about what it is taking to get to where you are now.
Yeah, the first thing I tell people, I've lived in a bunch of different places, but I always hold this out first, is I'm a Detroiter. I was born here, I was raised here, I'm a Detroit public school grad, love this town through and through. And so that's the first thing I like to get out to people, is that the work that I do is really a passion because this is my hometown. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Maize and Blue. I graduated from University of Michigan. I have a law degree and a business degree from there. And I actually used that education to take me to Wall Street. For a handful of years, I worked in New York as an investment banker. Mm-hmm. So that kind of dreaded New York finance person. But what that did is it gave me this arsenal of finance skills and leadership skills that I was able to bring back a few years ago to come to Detroit and to start Develop Detroit.
All right, good. All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. What do you hear from the communities, the people who have been in these communities for years, They've seen the good times, they've seen the bad times, and hopefully good times again. How do you partner with them?
Yeah, the community person, the resident that I think the most about is that person who has been in Detroit. They've paid their taxes, they've gotten up every day, they've gone to work, and for no fault of their own, they've watched their neighborhood deteriorate around them, and it's in those neighborhoods that Develop Detroit is most interested, where we try to do most of our work. And what we've heard from residents who are longstanding residents who are in that situation in neighborhoods is, finally, we're so glad that someone has shown up to pay attention to that abandoned lot that weeds have been growing in, to pay attention to that house that maybe it's not ready for demolition, but it's been vacant for 15 years, and we're just glad that someone is taking interest in it and that there's a new homeowner there. They ask us all the time, ask me all the time, how can I get a sit-down restaurant? How can I get a pharmacy in my neighborhood? How can we see some houses put back where there used to be houses 15, 20 years ago? And the reception is just, it's been positive. If there's anything that's negative, it's I wish that we could do more faster, you know, and unfortunately, this work just takes time.
Now, how do you sit down with your folks and say, okay, we can't do everything, so let's figure out what to focus on?
Yeah, it's always a tough conversation because you want to do everything, and you're I'm always meeting people across the city who want to have the conversation about investment in their neighborhood. What I've been doing for the last few years is really kind of thinking about where are the places that we can bring together the most friends and family, right? So where are the places where you have good access to jobs? Where are the places where you have good access to transportation? Where are the places where you have other people working? And my hope is that we can kind of build on all of those resources. And it's really important to get some early wins in this work, right? Because if you can demonstrate something works, even if you can demonstrate it on a small scale in one part of the city, people really wrap their arms around those wins, and that allows you to move.
That feeds on itself.
Yeah, it does. It really does allow you to get momentum. And so that's kind of how we've been thinking about it, is where can we go, a place that has need, that has some, some adjacent resources that we can build on, use that to prove that this can work, and then rinse and repeat in other places.
You've worked closely with Jamie Dimon, who heads up Chase Bank. Tell us a little bit how that relationship developed, and what have you gotten from them to make it easier to do what you want to do?
Yeah, Chase has been one of our strongest partners, both at Develop Detroit, but also across the city. And I talked a little bit earlier about the importance of collaboration and partnership. And Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase, they get that. They got that right from the beginning. And so they've supported my organization in a number of ways. Most importantly, they've really supported our vision of what neighborhood development can look like. Before the relationship with Chase, I was really struggling to find a bank, a lender who would look at a few blocks in a neighborhood and say, you know what, I'm going to make you that loan. I'm going to give you that capital so that you can do 3 blocks at a time. So you don't just have to do one house, stop, do another house, stop. And that's one of the things that JP Morgan Chase has unlocked for us, is the ability to go into a neighborhood and do revitalization more on a block by block basis.
When you're sitting down with the mayor or city council or bankers like Jamie Dimon, and they ask you, okay, Sonia, where are we going with this? What do you really want, and how do we get there? What is it you say to them?
I have this crazy vision of Detroit, a Detroit that is filled with neighborhoods that are approachable for all people. I just have this crazy vision that we can build these neighborhoods where seniors can live next to lawyers, can live next to janitors, can live next to teachers, and that there's housing that's affordable for each of those groups and attractive to each of those groups, and that there's services that work.
And what motivates Sonia Mays? What keeps you going on those days where you have just bumped your head against the wall, or you've run into a particular obstacle or problem? What makes you just say, okay, even though this is a big job, I'm going to keep doing it because it's what I was made to do?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's right for me to take credit for this, but I think that is that thing that is quintessentially Detroit. I think that's just a byproduct of growing up here. I mean, this is just a place where, you know, the Detroit I know is one of grit and ingenuity and resiliency, and you get out there and you just make it happen because that's what Detroiters do. And so, I embody all of that, and I do really think that my very being as a Detroiter is what motivates me to do this work, to keep at it. Make no mistake, it's difficult, it's challenging, sometimes it's thankless, but I think that's what makes me tick.
And when you see city council bump heads with the mayor on demolition, which affects you, what do you say?
I'm a little bit sympathetic to those conversations because I'm on the Detroit Public School Board as well, and so I'm a little bit sympathetic to those conversations about, you know, how public officials have to find a middle ground sometimes with all of these competing interests and tough decisions that have been made. What I'll say about that particular fight with the demolition bond is that regardless of what side of that issue you're on, I think everybody understands the importance of that kind of investment in our neighborhoods. And so to me, the argument is really about the finer points of should we be investing that money to tear more houses down? Should we be investing that money to build up houses? Should we be investing that money in affordable housing? And I'll take that because that's just a lot of our leaders sitting around the table trying to figure out how to do more for Detroit residents.
Are you happier now, more gratified now in what you're doing than when you were on Wall Street and you were dealing with corporate America?
Without question. Yes, there's not a moment of hesitation in that. This feels, the work that I'm doing now feels real in a way that, you know, on Wall Street I was moving numbers around on a spreadsheet, right? But this feels real in a way that doesn't come close to anything I was doing in New York. And I had a good experience there, but to know that the work that I'm doing is creating value for a person who has been in their home for 30 years and has seen kind of the worst of what can happen to communities, and to turn that around, it's great.
But final question.
Yeah.
Person out there listening who has a background as good as your background, educated, motivated, has a lot that they could be giving, but maybe sitting on the sidelines, hasn't really rolled up their sleeves and just jumped right in the rebuilding of Detroit. What message would you give them? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's pretty simple. You just, you know, the way to eat an elephant is, you know, one bite at a time, and you just have to get out there and do something. I mean, if you, there's so much work that has to be done here in Detroit. There's so many opportunities for people to get involved, and it all matters, right? Like I'm fortunate because I get to sit here and talk to you on TV. I get to be on 60 Minutes, but I have a whole team of people who are as passionate about this work and as talented as I am. And what really matters is that we're putting in the work on a day-to-day basis and we're making it happen. We're taking those small steps, and along the way, those small steps add up to big gains. And so I just encourage people just to get out there. You never really know what your effect on people and community can be until you take that step, till you do it. Yeah.
Sonia Mace, it's a pleasure talking with you. Keep up the good work and stay in touch with us on all the things you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And when Spotlight returns, I'll talk to the leaders of the Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight. We're going to be talking about a topic that probably needs a lot of mediation in many respects, for no pun intended. Him, good seeing you again.
Thank you.
And Dave Robinson, good seeing you.
Nice to see you, John.
Take me back a little bit. The Wayne County, let me make sure I got it right, Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center goes back how far?
Well, the original centers, the name of it was the Neighborhood Mediation Center, which dates back about 30 years ago. And then as the years have gone on, the state court became involved and was a jurisdiction over the centers, and now it has grown to where there's 18, they call them, basically mediation centers around the state that serve general areas. Like
from Grand Rapids all the way
all
over
Grand Rapids to the UP to Wayne County.
All right, explain to me, because I know you get a lot of your referrals from the courts, but what's the jurisdiction in terms of what you can mediate, what they tend to deal with, so that they won't have to deal with it on your end?
Well, what we usually do is we're a facilitative mediation where we basically sit down with the parties, try to eliminate the emotion and the roadblocks and barriers that they're having in their communication, which is usually the major issue, and to try to get them to resolve their own issues with our help in order to then present the court. If they're sent to us by the court to try to mediate, we try to get them to be able to come to an agreement amongst each other that then they can sign and then present to the court, and then the court has to agree that, okay, yeah, this makes sense, and they allow the individuals, and that becomes part of the actual court order.
Okay. Siam, how did you get involved with this? Because you're on the board, correct?
Yes, I've been involved with the Mediation Center for about 8 years, first and foremost as a mediator, which was really one of the most amazing things that I've ever done, because when you actually sit down with individuals and are able to come to a conclusion that is sort of advantageous to both parties, and they walk out happy and feeling as if they had control over their lives rather than having, being in a courtroom and having a judge decide. So it has been really one of the most fulfilling things I've done. And so through the years, I ended up joining the board, and then I was vice president for a while, and now I'm fortunate enough to be president of this wonderful organization. And David has come on as our executive director, who has really hit the ground running in, trying to create new programs and things like that. And in regards to, what we can and cannot mediate, anytime there's a violent crime involved, of course, that's something that we don't put our hands on whatsoever, and legally we're not able to.
You let
and
the
also,
criminal justice system deal with that.
And in regards to, we do a lot of domestic mediations, a lot of them. But if there is any kind of domestic violence involved, mediation is off the table. That becomes a court issue.
As executive director, what's the biggest challenge you face in running a center like this?
But trying to attract volunteers who are willing to commit themselves to come in and do mediations, that is probably the largest challenge. I mean, we have some wonderful, great mediators. Don't get me wrong, we have some great mediators. But for the people, and especially if there's sometimes very complicated issues, if they happens to be like an estate, a property dispute type thing, yes, it does help when we have people that have legal background that understand some of those things. And just to bring as many mediators as we have on board, to be able to go out and help solve the community's problems. And it's volunteer because we want to be accessible by anybody that has disputes, whether they have the ability to pay for mediation or not mediation. We're going to provide it,
right,
especially in Wayne County.
All right, we're going to take a break. I want to know a little bit more about who gets to mediate and what kind of backgrounds they need to have. And I want to explore the money angle that you just referenced. Excellent. We'll be right back. Stay with us. David, you were telling me in the break that you used to be with the Dearborn Police Department?
Yes, sir. I just retired actually in July from the Dearborn Police Department. I retired as a deputy chief and served 30 years there. So I'm not, I guess, not used to mediation, because that's kind of a police officer's job. They mediate situations all day, every day.
Yeah. So you have a background for this.
Yes.
For people that are interested in mediating things, what kind of background do they need to have? I mean, obviously you have a law enforcement one, but is that something you go to school for? Is it something that you all teach a class in? I mean,
well, we have class, and there are several trainings around the state that if you're an attorney, you still need to go to these classes to be able to have that qualifying education. Mm-hmm. But we look for anybody, retired individuals, especially retired school teachers, retired police officers, retired firefighters, retired people who are used to dealing with the public. We have some retired judges. We have some retired like housewives who are done. They want to get out. They want to do stuff. And if they want to come out and actually serve the community, of course they go through an interview process. They go through a background check. before that they're allowed to do that. But then we accept them into the training, we bring them through the training, they complete the training, then they have to do some mediations that are co-mediations and observed mediations, and then they can start doing the mediations on their own. We are a pilot program for a program called MI Resolve, which is starting to be a online format for mediations.
Oh, really?
And it's free to the public. If they have a dispute, they can go online for MI Resolve, and wherever they're at, they mark, if they're in Wayne County, they mark the Wayne County Center, or if they're in...
So is it like a chat?
Well, almost, yeah. It's like they chat back and forth with the mediator. The two parties have to, number one, agree that they're going to use this format, and it's almost like an email chain back and forth, and the mediator actually facilitate online, which, and I think the reason that they're doing this as a pilot, see how well it works, because everybody's on their cell phones now, everybody's on their laptops, and life is busy for people, so that it's a convenience type thing. And so we're one of there's 3 centers piloting this, and so we're very interested to see how it works out.
Would you say that this is, in lack of better words, an industry that is really growing?
It is.
And have you noticed, because we're living in a very partisan world now, that your caseload is increased because of just the tension and the fact that people seem to not be able to agree to disagree?
Absolutely, and I believe, you know, our current environment right now, the Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center is definitely, you know, in the middle of all of that because of the fact that
so what we see happening in the larger society, whether it's
Absolutely.
Washington or it's Lansing or it's local, that's feeding into all of this.
Right, it hits us all personally, and with organizations like that, it definitely comes to that front door, because it is about dispute and it is about not being able to get along. And unfortunately, you know, I think, you know, our purpose is to try to facilitate that as much as we can. And yes, it's definitely a larger portion of it as what we see today.
And we would much rather be able to mediate somebody to a good resolution, rather than them have to go out and all of a sudden it becomes litigious, where they're having to hire attorneys here, when really it could be just a conversation between 2 parties. It could take as little as an hour or 2, rather than go through all that. So we want it available to everyone.
Don't want to be the best kept secret in Wayne County. We want to be the people that others go to resolve their issues and to make their lives better, and also to bring some, you know, peaceful families together, and that's what we need more of. And so this center is there for everyone to come in and find that peace and find that common ground to be able to move on in a positive direction.
All right, well, the cat's out of the bag now.
I'm glad it is, and
Thank
thanks
you
to you.
so much for coming in,
Thank
David.
you so
Thank
much,
you
Chuck,
for
for
coming
having
in.
us.
Thank you.
Special thanks to all my guests. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.